Hello and welcome to episode 310 of the Clean Energy Show. I'm Brian Stockton.
I'm James Whittingham.
This week, Guerrilla Solar is taking off in the Philippines. Congratulations to all the gorillas in the Philippines, now powering their tree houses with solar power. Wait, I'm being told that's the wrong spelling of gorilla. Wait, I'm also being told that I'm an idiot.
The world's largest battery maker is showing that new sodium-ion batteries can power the planet's electricity grids cheaper than anyone imagined until recently. Now, if we can get sodium into batteries and out of my diet, I might live long enough to reap the benefits of the new world.
A doctor in Australia is fighting the waste and carbon footprint of hospitals. It turns out nitrous oxide, also known as laughing gas, is a potent greenhouse gas. I guess we have to cancel our plans to do a bonus episode while huffing laughing gas.
The good news is that helium is not a greenhouse gas, so we can do an episode on helium.
All that, your letters, the lightning round, and more on this edition of the Clean Energy Show. Okay, it's the first show of the month, and we give shout-outs to our Patreon members who make this podcast possible. Thank you, everyone, for financially supporting us. You could do it for as little as $0 at patreon.com/cleanenergypod. You don't have to pay money, but it helps us if you do. The high rollers are going to get them out of the way first. The Clean Club Executive, Green Bastard, Brent Routley, Tiernan, and the Clean Club Plus members, Bob Armstrong, John Hayes, Wes S., and Glenn Wright. Thank you so much for your generosity, and we'll give more shout-outs at the end of the show.
All right, James, it is time to play Jeopardy!
Back to you, Greg.
Business history 800.
The end of an EV tax credit in 2025 hurt sales for Tesla and other makers, like this one, about to introduce the R2. Alice.
What is Rivian?
Right.
Ooh, you got it.
Yeah.
Good for
I
him.
normally put these on the show because they often get them wrong.
They're
But
getting
this one
smarter.
included a visual clue, which was a picture of the
Yeah.
Rivian. So that was,
Or
easy for me.
they're listening to this podcast, as we suggested all Jeopardy contestants do, in case they get questions like this. As part of your homework is to listen to our podcast.
You know what? I think that's an excellent idea. All right, so we have a bonus question from the same episode of Jeopardy. So play that first one.
Let's do map 16.
The answer there. Another daily double. This is the last one in the game, Greg. How much do you want to wager?
Let's do 6,000.
6,000 this time will take you to 22,400 if you're right. On the map. The name of this Alberta city refers to an actual accessory called a SAMUS.
The SAMUS, James, do you know what the SAMUS is?
No, Brian, I don't know what the SAMUS is.
Yeah, and this has nothing to do with clean energy, but this is about a city near us. So I did not get this either. So I'm always embarrassed when I don't get the Canadian clues, especially the ones that are near us. So when you're ready, go ahead and play the answer.
What's Moose Jaw?
No. Medicine Hat, Alberta was the right city here.
Oh, I put the buzzer in.
Yeah.
I don't think there's enough buzzers in Jeopardy, so I put that in.
No. But they guessed Moose Jaw, which is the city right near us, which we love to talk about and visit.
What was
not
the question
Moose Jaw.
again? What is a...
SAMUS. SAMUS.
Well, it's not
A
a
city named
moose's
after-
jaw.
No, well, I mean, in fairness to the contestant, that's in the same geographic area.
Sure.
I mean, Moose Jaw's not in Alberta. It's in Saskatchewan. But still, the guy took a guess. He took a shot. But a SAMUS, apparently, Medicine Hat.
Yeah, I dislike traveling through Medicine Hat on my way to the mountains or my relatives.
You know what? We stopped there last time. They have an amazing ceramics museum there. So highly recommended to visit the Ceramics Museum in Medicine Hat.
Ceramics?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm
Medicine
not
Hat.
following you. It's a museum of pottery?
Yeah, pottery and ceramics. Medicine Hat is known for its pottery. They must have good clay deposits there or something, but they have a long history of ceramics in Medicine Hat, and they have an amazing museum.
Okay, well, I had dinner with my son's friends. They asked me, it was very unusual. Have you ever had your kids say, I want you to have dinner with my friends? You have adult children. It was a very unusual request, and I didn't think twice about it. Of course, I was going to do that. And his friend is an engineer who went to school, graduated before my son, and he's living in our city now with his girlfriend who's in pre-med, and they are looking at a future here in our city. They like our city. They're from a small town. They're from Swan River. I won't mention the
Yeah.
person's name because I don't want to out him, but they're from Swan River, Manitoba, which is a small 4,000 person town. And it's kind of a hub in the area. So there's a lot of car dealerships, and the car dealerships apparently sell cars for like 9,000 more than they do in the big city down south. So, but people just go for it. They don't question it. And they're very right wing and traditional and not pro EV in any manner. This guy, he went and got himself a Lexus, brand new Lexus for like 1% financing, less than 1% financing from the city. His dad co-signed the loan, and, so he's set up with a car. I'm sure my son would do the exact same thing. But this guy, he loves his car, and he wants to know where in the city to live, because I grew up here. I have lots of knowledge about our city, so I know about different neighborhoods. But of course, I spent most of the dinner getting him up to speed on pollution and saying, frankly, if I had the choice, I wouldn't live in this city, period. Because I don't know how far the pollution goes. And it's my monitoring is showing disturbing things every night now. It's bad. Now there's temperature inversions at night, but it wasn't this bad last summer. It wasn't happening like this last summer. Every night, if it's no wind or very light wind, there's horrible things. I don't know. The steel mill, I think, is putting out pollution more than they used to. That's my hunch, but I can't prove that. I can't do anything about it, other than move far, far away. But that seems to be what's going on. Like last night, my partner came in the door and said, it's horrible out there. It smells like a paint can. But the wind was not from the refinery. It was from the north. It was from, we were downwind from the steel mill, the electric arc steel mill. And of course, I've searched up all the different things that can come out of these two things. And I've shown pictures on our Patreon page of what is on my car every morning. And I was setting up my e-bike with a new bike computer that I got that has GPS on it and lots of different functions. You don't need a sensor. It just works with GPS and gives you your elevation gain, your speed and all that. So it's very simple and easy to use. I was setting up and I went away for a couple of hours. I came back and there was soot on it in the middle of the day, like little specks of gray on it. And I'm thinking, what's in my garden? Should I buy lead tests? And how far does this go? How far does this go? Because it's happening all the time now. And I really don't know what to do about it, but I feel pretty helpless. And I expressed that to him. I also expressed that the refinery has been known to ruin car paint if they have fugitive emissions. That was a long time ago. You were more knowledgeable about that than I, because you said cars were driving around because they didn't take the insurance, so they had bad paint for years and years.
It was about 30 years ago. There was some emission. So everybody kind of in your neighborhood, a bunch of the paint started peeling off cars, and everybody got a settlement, like a check for $1,000 or $2,000 to cover a new paint job. But not everybody did it. They just took the money and then they drove around. There was tons of cars in our city that had peeling paint.
Yeah. Well, that's somebody. I was at a book launch a couple of years ago, almost now. There, the refinery workers said that they lived in uplands and the paint was peeling off their sheds or something. I can't quite remember. So it was quite an event, and that got his attention because he loves his car. He's one of these people who really loves his car and takes care of it, and it's all about his car, which is fine. And he thinks he'll get an electric car one day, and he listens to our podcast sometimes. So shout out to you. You know who you are, and your girlfriend. And thanks for dinner. He also paid for the check, which is important when you're a podcaster. It's very nice of him. Thank you. Didn't have to do that, though. Renewables have got big sort of bit of momentum last week because 57 countries, we haven't talked about this yet, except for when it was announced on the annual COP, the meeting of the countries to discuss climate change, which happens every late November, early December. And they were so frustrated because they couldn't utter the word fossil fuels last time. They weren't allowed to because the petrostates, forbode it.
Yeah.
So they came up with a new conference in Santa Marta, Colombia, that just took place last week. 57 countries showed up. They're largely from the global south, Europe and Canada as well. Although I don't know how Canada can do this. They're just discussing how we can phase out fossil fuels. That's all. There's no agreements like COP. It's just like, let's get together and talk.
At the last COP in Brazil, several countries blocked even the mention of fossil fuels from the main agreement. Somewhat out of frustration, Colombia and the Netherlands announced they would move ahead with the transition regardless. Those keen to be part of the new era joined them in Santa Marta, a city on the northern edge of Colombia next to the Caribbean Sea.
So yeah, it was refreshing not to be combative with petrol states like us, like Canada, and certainly the United States, who wasn't there, by the way. They just wanted to figure out how to get off fossil fuels. France is the only country to announce a total phase-out. They did that last week, and they set 2050 as their goal. But France is the only country so far to actually say we're phasing out. China's also against this, by the way. One of the leaders in renewables is not saying that they're going to cut out fossil fuels, which is too bad because they perfectly well have the ability to do so. And all the countries, by the way, Brian, were democracies. So there's kind of a split now between democracies and petrostates and authoritarian states that want to, the politicians have been got to by fossil fuels in those areas, and it's very difficult to phase them out. But of course, as everything we talk about on the show, the momentum is there. It's already being phased out. We just need, little nudges here and there, basically, at this time.
The transition is happening regardless, but meetings like this can help move it forward. All right, so from Bloomberg, a doctor in Australia is trying to stem the tide of waste in the healthcare industry. Now, anytime you've been to the doctor, James, you've probably noticed how they're always kind of peeling something out of a piece of plastic, unwrapping it, using it on you, and then the whole thing gets thrown away, not just the packaging.
I just had a scope down my throat. And by the way, highly recommend it. I don't want to diverge too much here, but I was probably going to mention this anyway in the intro. Good drugs, don't remember a thing. And my dad died of esophagus cancer, so I had acid reflux. It's been treated for 20 years, but they just, before they do this operation on me this summer, they wanted to have a looky-loo. And my esophagus got a clean bill of health, which was a relief because my dad died, I think, about 7 years older than I am currently. So who knows what could have happened. He was a smoker for part of his life, and that contributes as well to such things. But they also found polyps in my stomach. One of them could have been precancerous. So they snipped that off to have a look. We haven't got the results back. It's a slow growing thing. And it's actually, they come up because you do take this anti-reflux medication for long term. You can have little polyps in your stomach, but usually they're benign. So that was just a precautionary thing. And, the scope up the other end, which I've had 3 times, a lot more involved.
Yeah.
I don't mind the scope itself because they give you drugs for that, but it's the preparation of, diarrhea and having to clean out yourself that's not pleasant. But the scope down this end, I was worried about it for a long time. Really good. And of course, highly recommended.
We don't know if they threw that scope away after they stuffed it down your throat or not.
Not throw the scope away. They sterilized it, but I had lots of plastic. I remember thinking about this because they said, put your clothes. Well, they said, take off your pants. I don't know why I had to take off my pants. I'm getting the scope on this end. And it was in the department where they did both ends, but they said, take off your pants and put on a gown. So I did. And then they said, well, put your pants and everything and your jacket into this giant bag, which was
plastic bag.
Not just a bag, but it would have been a huge garbage bag that you would use in your yard or something. So that I noted right there that was a waste. And then there was other things as well.
Yeah, I've used those before at the hospital, and for sure they throw those things out. Often the gowns are single use. Depends on where you are, but all kinds of things in health and medicine are single use. Now, here was the shocking thing I did not realize. Greenhouse gases come from things like anesthesia.
Yeah.
So when there's an inhaled gas like nitrous oxide, which is laughing gas, you inhale it and then you exhale it, and then it's a very potent greenhouse gas. I had no idea. It is potentially thousands of times higher as a CO2, as a greenhouse gas than CO2, thousands of times higher. Now, it's hopefully a small amount, but nevertheless, various anesthesias are a bad greenhouse gas.
And I'm going to be getting some this summer.
Yeah. So anyway, there's some stats here in the article. In Australia, hospitals are responsible for an estimated 7% of national emissions. And in U.S., healthcare is about 8.5%. Globally, if the healthcare sector were a country, it would be the 5th largest emitter, well above Japan and Canada. These are quite shocking numbers.
I will point out that my good drugs were not anesthesia, Joe. For this procedure, they put it in an IV.
That's right.
And I don't think those emitted, although I was somewhat gassy afterwards. I don't know if that counts.
But I was sad to hear that because, I love getting nitrous oxide at, say, at the dentist. It's a nice...
Now you feel guilty about it. Now you feel guilty about it. You can't feel good about your nitrous oxide.
Anyway, so there's a doctor, Forbes McGain is his name, and he's at Melbourne, Australia's...
No, it's not. That's not his
Forbes
name.
McGain. Forbes McGain, that's his name.
It sounds like a cartoon character. I mean, like a 3-strip cartoon in the paper.
Exactly. So it's Footscray Hospital in Melbourne, Australia. And so this doctor, he's become the Associate Dean of Healthcare Sustainability at the University of Melbourne and is trying to implement as many techniques as possible to help reduce their carbon footprint. So at his hospital, they have decontamination rooms and staff in navy scrubs and hair covers, rinse trays, reassemble surgical kits, and load bundles of linen into a wall of sterilizing machine.
Yeah.
Green and yellow plastic bowls are stacked on a trolley waiting to be washed, packaged, and put back into circulation. A lot of hospitals would not have this at all, says Forbes McGain, nodding toward the reusable bundles. It would all just be chucked away. So they're going to switch. We were going to switch to disposables because everyone said it would save us money, he says. But in reality, it doesn't. That's what I find disturbing. These assumptions get made without any scientific rationale. So to take just one example, his team's time and motion study found that even after paying staff to wash and sterilize equipment, single-use products are still more expensive.
Really?
But I think people, just make that assumption that this is a cheaper way to go. So, this is a massive, massive market. So this is going to be difficult to disrupt or interrupt. The global medical plastics industry alone is on track to surpass $87 billion by 2030. And for decades, manufacturers equated disposability with safety.
Sure.
A narrative that built a global supply chain on fossil fuels and throwaway products. It says here, during the height of the pandemic, McGain's hospital threw away more than 1 million gowns in a single year. And by November 2021, COVID-19 vaccinations had generated an estimated 144,000 metric tons of syringe and needle waste globally, while test kits were responsible for 731,000 liters of chemical waste, according to the World Health Organization. So this all started after World War II, when plastics got cheaper and the trend hardened in the 1980s amid HIV fears and aggressive manufacturer marketing that sold throwaway items as safer.
Right. Well, we always talked about the pandemic as we started this podcast in the pandemic, about how emissions went down, but who knew that we weren't thinking about that other end of it, the mass vaccinations would actually cause emissions because of the plastics.
Yeah, for sure. Now, there's another footnote here. One of the most frustrating setbacks for Forbes McGain was when he lobbied for the new hospital to be built without gas heating. And the idea had support from hospital administrators, but was ultimately rejected. Large contractors and service providers are often biased toward longstanding gas infrastructure, making all-electric builds harder to push through. So that was a setback, but there is a new hospital opening in the area in early 2026, and it will be all electric.
Well, that's good to hear. I can't imagine hospitals easily taking a stand on this, especially I for some reason I think of the American hospitals, which are private for some reason.
Yeah.
It is a money-saving thing. Maybe we could argue that.
Yeah, clean energy almost always will save you money. So
well, that's an interesting story, and I had no idea about it. I wanted to also interject here because I bought this drone a while ago, about in 2017 or something.
Yeah.
And it had a single battery from a department store, but it has a GPS because my low point in fatherhood was when I got a kid's drone from Costco, flew it myself, lost contact with it in the wintertime, and it flew over a school and landed on the school roof, and that was that. There was not a damn thing I could do about it. And I felt bad, so I went and bought a GPS drone where that couldn't happen to, because if it loses signal, it comes back to base. Okay, that's part of the story. But it hasn't had a working battery in a long time. This is the battery for it. Okay, it's just a small, almost like a pack of gum or something, right? This isn't like a DJI drone. This is just a department store kind of drone that's about $100 Canadian at the time. Yeah. And I finally got a new battery for it because the thing's been hanging on the wall. And I thought, well, it's been hard to get a battery for it, but I got one. And now the new batteries after these years are basically 50% more energy in them in the same space. So that speaks to energy density that we always talk about on the show for cars and storage, how that's improving. Well, even for my little drone, same space, same weight, it is 50% more energy.
Was it difficult to replace the battery? Because sometimes these things are kind of meant to be thrown away.
Well, yeah, this is just a generic battery that somebody made in China and imported it to Amazon here in Canada. So it has been hard because I haven't got one. Like, I've been looking at them and sometimes they were expensive. This was only $20 though, which is like $15 US money for a new battery, and it'll go 10 minutes instead of 7 minutes. Let's put it that way.
But was there soldering involved, or could you just snap it in?
No, these things, they come with, you can buy multiple batteries, so they come with a little plug. And that's one thing that was unique about this is the plug. It's got a red plug instead of a white plug, and it's a bit different. So that was a bit tricky to find. So yeah, now I have that.
Yeah, because sometimes products are made with a battery that's really not meant to be replaced, and that sucks.
This was an Australian company, Sky Viper. Shout out to Australia if we haven't given you enough attention in the show already. By the way, CATL, the world's largest battery maker, they are in China. They are saying that these new sodium-ion batteries are basically mainstream ready, and they've signed a massive 60 gigawatt-hour deal. So sodium-ion batteries are these new batteries that have been around for a couple of years now, developed mostly in China, although I'm sure lots of people are working on them. Rivian's working on them in America. You mentioned them in the Jeopardy section earlier. Well, they're saying that these are so ready that by the end of this year, they're going to be mass producing them, and they're already starting to produce them on lower scale. So sodium is basically lithium-ion battery, but you replace the lithium, which is kind of hard and kind of expensive, with sodium, which is salt. Not any salt, but it's pretty available, this kind of salt, the sodium that they can get. And there's a drawback to it, but there's also some advantages. One of the drawbacks is that you can't get as much energy density in it, like I was talking about my drone battery. So if this was sodium-ion, maybe it would fly for 7 minutes instead of 10 minutes, but it would still be the same size, right? And there wouldn't be any, drone batteries and batteries like that. They all make lithium so they can go as far as they can. But not all batteries have to be this small and fly in a drone. Some of them are huge batteries that are the size of a container on the back of a big truck that would be parked in a grid somewhere with the power of the grid. You'd have a bunch of these batteries the size of containers, shipping containers, and in them they would power the grid. And we even have some close to where I live, but they're not sodium-ion. Well, the point is that these sodium-ion batteries, their advantages are great for grid storage, but they're also, CATL said, they're putting them into cars now, but they're going to put them in mass produce them in cars by the end of this year. So what will happen is those cars will be a lower mileage. They'll have a lower range. They'll have probably around maybe a max of 500 or so. So they'll be kind of more city cars compared to the longer range cars now. Yeah. But they'll be cheaper. But right now they're about the same price, but they see them getting a lot cheaper as they go along because these are brand new. So they claim sodium-ion mass production is solved because there was some problems with that. And this 60 gigawatt hours is a lot, right? That is a lot. That's like storing, a nuclear reactor for 2.5 days, basically the output of it. It's a lot of power, and it's Hyperstrong is the company, largest sodium-ion battery order ever. So this is not a novelty. This is what this point of the story is. This is not a novelty. This is not some new technology that we think, oh, great. This is actually going into production and will start solving our problems of the world right now. Half of CATL's total 25 energy storage output is going to be this one order of sodium-ion batteries. So these big battery companies, they make a lot of battery storage for the world. This is half of it for one order, for one company, and it's sodium ion, not lithium ion. It is a big milestone. CATL says it has solved key manufacturing challenges such as energy density, which will continue to improve. Moisture control was an issue for them, as well as some production issues, and they claim it is now ready for mass deployment. And so it uses sodium instead of lithium, which is much more abundant in the world and cheaper. And it's best suited for grid scale storage because you don't have to worry about the weight or the size as much. And the cost matters more than the size and the weight. But this is a huge hedge against lithium price volatility, which goes up and down. It's going up right now. So sometimes that can slow down the transition when lithium goes up in price. It has, if you're into specs, 160 watt hours per kilogram of energy density, and they see that improving. 15,000 charge cycles, which is a very large lifespan. That's the amount of time it can go from completely empty to completely full. Lithium-ion batteries were typically started around 1,000 cycles when we started making cars for the world. This is 15 times that. So if that means it'll last that many years longer, or that much more longer, 15 times as long, depending on how much you use it. And so that means the cost per kilowatt stored, the amount of energy stored in it, gets really cheap if you can use the same battery for a long, long time. And it's efficient. It's 97% efficient. So you're only losing 3% when you charge it up and discharge it, which is a really good thing. It's better than lithium in most cases. And it works in extreme temperatures, which we like because we live in an extreme place. And we are a hard to decarbonize place, and they're always using cold weather as an excuse. This is great for cars, too. If you and I ever get a sodium-ion battery in our car, or maybe we check that off as an option someday, minus 40 degrees Celsius, which is also minus 40 Fahrenheit, up to plus 70 Celsius. So batteries can be affected by cold, and they can be damaged by heat. So this is great news. They are very versatile. You can put them in a desert, you could put them here, and you won't have to worry about the thermostat, the temperature, the mercury going down to minus 40, which it does occasionally. Didn't this year, praise the winter gods, but it can. And it is designed to be compatible with existing lithium-ion infrastructure. So it's not a whole new thing. It's the same thing in a different package. It's like this battery, but there's a different chemistry in it, but it still would work in my drone, right? If they wanted to do that, theoretically. Same thing for a car. Same thing for existing grid energy storage systems, which makes it cheaper and faster to decarbonize the world when that happens. It does have EV potential. CATL plans mass production for EVs by the end of this year, targeting LFP level performance in a few years. That's around 600 kilometers. So LFP is another kind lithium iron phosphate formula batteries. Except for the very long range cars, that is very common now. It is the majority of cars, that sort of chemistry, which is great for its own reasons because it has its own advantages as well. For instance, charging to 100%, you can leave it at 100% and not worry about it like you can with traditional higher density lithium-ion batteries. It is the first sodium EV is already launched, and CATL batteries are going in there. And rivals like BYD also developing sodium techs. There are lots of people, but CATL, like they usually are, because they are the world's biggest battery company, have tens and tens of thousands of engineers working on this around the clock, is far ahead in real-world orders and scale. Some call this a potential DeepSeek moment. DeepSeek is the Chinese AI company that sort of surprised everyone, and people are realizing that this could dramatically lower energy storage costs. Like, why is this important? It's because renewables are variable. Solar obviously only makes energy in the daytime, and specifically mostly sunny days, more so than cloudy days, but it does do stuff on cloudy days as well. But the more you can have a really cheap storage for this, the longer you can pay to store it, and the more renewables you can use, and the more you can rely on those renewables. I mean, if batteries were free, right, we could use solar panels and wind, and that would be all we would ever have to do, right? Well, the batteries are expensive, but technology like this is starting to become cheap and showing a potential for very, very cheap energy storage on grid scale basis, which means we can decarbonize electricity generation and some industrial processes. So this is a big deal, and it could accelerate the clean transition, which you and I are all about.
All right, from Clean Technica, Guerrilla Solar takes off in the Philippines. So the Manila Electric Company, which is known as Meralco, they're the largest private electric distribution utility in the Philippines. They serve 7 million customers, and they're pressing the Philippine government to tighten technical requirements for rooftop solar systems, and the contractors installing them, citing a rapid expansion of unregistered installations that operate outside the formal regulatory oversight. So net metering in the Philippines, like many places, allows distributed solar users to export their excess electricity to the grid in exchange for bill credits. Your meter runs backwards. But the process has been widely criticized in the Philippines for its permitting complexity and long approval timelines. We talk about this all the time on the show. Red tape can be a real killer for the expansion of clean energy.
It's a big deal. It really changes the price and viability of solar. Like, they figured it out in Australia, but they haven't figured it out elsewhere yet.
It becomes the bottleneck if people are constantly waiting for permits for this stuff. So Meralco said there's more than 20,000 registered rooftop systems. That's about 170 megawatts. But there's 370 megawatts, almost twice as much in the commercial sector alone that does not have formal registration.
The commercial sector. So we're talking about
twice as much.
Factories, we're talking about warehouses, I'm assuming things like that have just thrown solar on the roofs or their whatever space they have, and not worrying about it going back into the grid when it's sunny in the middle of the day and they make too much of it.
Yeah.
But are they storing any of it? I mean, how are they using it?
Not typically, but these things have to be built with safety systems, mainly safety cutoff systems, so that if the grid goes down, your home solar system isn't exporting electricity to the grid, because somebody could be working on the grid and get electrocuted from the excess power. So that's one reason. And just the ability of the utility to just keep track of how much power they have on the grid. They need to be able to manage their grid.
They need to know how much solar is out there to factor in the way they run the grid, because that affects, ramping up coal plants or nuclear. Sometimes nuclear tries to stay steady, but it's not always. And natural gas turbines as well has to be ramped up and be on the ready. So if they don't know how much solar is out there, rogue solar, then what are you going to do?
So the red tape is one reason. The other reason is power tends to be kind of expensive in the Philippines, 18 to 22 cents, U.S. cents per kilowatt hour. So that's on the high end. And, the Philippines is not a high income country. So I imagine that can be quite a drain on people's resources there. And that leads them to just throwing up their own solar panels. And really anybody can connect any wires to any other wires. If you think you know what you're doing. But that's why we have regulations, and that's why this stuff needs to be taken care of.
Well, when the zombie apocalypse comes, I'm going to throw up some solar panels in my yard and connect it to a couple of 12-volt batteries from a car and put an inverter on there to convert that electricity into AC, so I can, I don't know what I'll run, maybe my car. We'll see. Yeah. But so I can run from the zombies.
The Mad Max future will very much be solar powered.
Well, there you go. And certainly if you had solar right on your car, that would be even cooler. Let's drop into the mailbag for a moment here. We've got a letter from Millie, who seems to be in Calgary, Alberta, Canada. She says, "Hi, I was just listening to your OPEC episode and heard you talking about how long gas would last in a plug-in electric hybrid, PHEV, with a 600-kilometer range." Yeah, we were talking about that because these cars... They're a hybrid, but then they've got this battery that allows it to just go in EV mode, so you can charge it up at home. I remember cars that were 28 kilometers, then they went up to 40. Toyota had their Prius plug-in that went up to 40. Now they're like 70 or 80. Other cars we've talked about in China have 600 just on their own, just before the gas engine kicks in. And I'm like, you're carrying around a gas engine because I don't understand. If you go 600 kilometers, go pee and charge your car. Especially in China, you can charge it in 5 minutes, maybe.
And the concern is you could have this gas in your tank that you don't end up using for a very long time, and gas eventually expires. It goes stale and doesn't quite work.
This is a concern because my use would be, I don't make a lot of trips, and when I do, they're often in the summer for little vacations and things. So I would never use a gas engine. So, and I think you're kind of the same way. You would basically, around town, you plug in every night and use the EV mode because that's the cheapest and most luxurious way to travel. But she says, I have a PHEV with a much smaller range, but the gas tank is pressurized to make the gas last longer. I didn't know that. I have to push a button and wait a few seconds before filling it. I've gone at least 4 months without filling it without any problems. The gas engine also runs when it's colder out, colder than minus 15 Celsius, and the engine gets up to temperature. Now, I've never understood why, she says, since electric cars function at that temperature, they do. My guess is that it's so that it can change to the gas engine seamlessly if it needs to. That's true. That is why they do it. But the also benefit of that, by running the engine, it's not using a lot of gas to just idle it, but it does also charge the battery, and it does also have waste heat, which they use in the cabin to heat the cabin in cold weather. So that's quite a bonus. And it does make sense to do that. But when I test drove one of these, I hated that the gas engine went on when it was cold. I didn't want a gas engine. I wanted it there as a backup. Yeah. And oftentimes they don't work as backups in cold weather in winter. People who have winter, she says you can also choose to run it in gas-only mode, which is good. Like sometimes you can, if you're coming to the city and you can charge up in the city, you get more mileage in the city if you're in EV mode because you regenerate with your braking. Some people can do that. I can also choose to run it in gas-only mode. I don't, but I expect you need to do that once or twice a year in a car such as with big electric range. That's from Millie. Thank you for that letter. Any comments?
No, I think that about covers us. If anybody else wants to send us a message, cleanenergyshow@gmail.com, voicemail at speakpipe.com/cleanenergyshow. Please get in touch with us. We are an independent podcast powered by listeners like you. Patreon.com/cleanenergypod. You can support us for as little as $1 a month. You get ad-free episodes, early access, exclusive content. There is a private Discord. Patreon.com/cleanenergypod. Thanks for keeping independent climate journalism alive. Coming up next, it's the lightning round.
It's time for the lightning round.
The lightning round is a fast-paced look at the latest headlines in climate, clean energy, and transportation.
Chinese car company BYD sales in April viz last year inside China down 15.5%. They're struggling. Car makers are struggling, particularly BYD. It's the 8th straight month of declines of sales in China, which is why they've come out with this Blade 2 battery and this, they put up like 5,000 chargers already. The announcement is only 6 weeks old, and it's incredible what they're doing. And they're doing it in deserts, they're doing it everywhere. But outside China, BYD sales are up 35%, so they're pushing that. And guess what? My son, just before the show, sent me a picture of a BYD sea lion in Lucerne, outside of Lucerne, Switzerland. My son is traveling through Europe right now. You should have seen the plane he went over on. It looked like a joke. I wasn't sure he was going to make it. But yeah, he's traveling through Europe and he's finding it very expensive. He did find a bowl of spaghetti for $2.50 in Switzerland. Not euros. It's crowns, maybe? I don't know. But sorry, I know we have people listening in Switzerland. I apologize. But yes, so he came across as the first one he's seen. I've told him to investigate high-speed rail, everything else, and get back charging infrastructure, whatever he can see over there while he's traveling through various places. I think he's going to Germany. He landed in Germany, went to Switzerland. He's going through Amsterdam and maybe not the traditional places, though, because he wants to avoid touristy things. He doesn't want a backlash against tourism like Paris. So Azerbaijan has sent 5 electric buses to Ukraine for humanitarian purposes. Would they be hard to charge? I'm not sure because, Russia's always bombing the power grid in Ukraine. But also the supply of gas is disrupted as well. Yeah. Gas and diesel. So who knows? It might be. Yeah, that's kind of interesting, though, that they're sending electric buses to Ukraine as a humanitarian effort. Oil-happy Canadian province Alberta is adding a $14 per solar panel eco-tax to solar panels. Eco-tax. Because they just want to find another way to discourage people from using solar. So because they can supposedly dispose of it. You know, if you pay an eco-tax on, say, a car tire here, they will take the car tire and recycle it or do something with it, right?
Yeah.
Well, there is no process anywhere in Canada to recycle solar panels right now. So unless they're sent to the United States, it's just an obvious ploy to discourage solar. Even I bet we get that where we live anytime soon.
Yeah.
This is a CES fast fact. India went from 15% to 70% internet access in a decade. Mobile phones. They skipped the landline, went straight to mobile phones, and that gave everyone access. So that's our world in data. Oh, here's another CES fast fact. About 30% of residential lamps, light bulbs, if you will, we were just talking about this, are yet to be upgraded to LEDs. 30% of them. And 15% of the existing bulbs are early LEDs nearing the end of their life.
Yeah, we talked about this. The amount of electricity used by lighting has plummeted, absolutely plummeted, but it could plummet even more if that remaining 30% are finally switched over to LEDs.
New analysis shows Canadian households with EVs can save hundreds of dollars every month. Of course, gas prices are high. They're, I think, $1.90 per liter of gasoline here. And if you translated that to U.S. gallons, you would be shocked to the United States how expensive that is. And that's with them taking 10 cents a liter off the gas, which would be about 40 cents a gallon temporarily. It's about, this is if you had a single detached house with one economy car and one medium-sized SUV. If they were both electric instead of gas, every month you could save $361 in Saskatchewan. That's where we live, where we have crappy electricity, but still fairly cheaply priced. But the cheaper the electricity in places that have existing hydro like Quebec and BC have even greater savings of around $500 per month. That's per month, Brian. I mean, how long do you have to have a car before you start saying, get an EV?
And that's based on one economy car and one medium-sized SUV. And we know many people around here that just drive two gigantic trucks or two gigantic SUVs. It's insane what their gas bill must be.
Yeah, that's a relatively reasonable household around here and probably throughout much of the United States and Canada. New research shows that sector integration lowers costs for electricity. What is sector integration? Well, wind and solar combinations is better than, we always talk about solar. Well, we even compared it to nuclear.
Yeah.
But if you mix in wind takes up some of the nighttime slack, so you don't have to put batteries in. So that's cheaper. And it also takes up the slack on cloudy days. Cloudy days is often windier. So potentially costing half as much as nuclear, depending on regional conditions. So that is the story on the energy mix. Nuclear fans can yell at them. Don't yell at me, please. I'm just delivering that analysis. A YouTuber named Simply Gregster EV found a parking lot of Chinese brand Sherry EVs in Toronto. They're here.
Yeah.
You know, Canada has said we can allow now Chinese EVs at a relatively low tariff instead of 100% like the United States. They're letting in like 50,000 at 6%, which is reasonable. And the Model 3, 39,000 Canadian.
Yeah, that's amazing. And they have to compete now with the Chinese stuff coming in.
But you can't get the $5,000 tax rebate, the rebate for the Tesla, because it was made in China. If you could, holy cow, I think I would be on the Tesla website now trying to get rid of my Bolt and trading it in. I have some brand problems with Tesla, of course, but it's a really good car. And it is, you know, the Model Y is the best-selling EV in the world by far, but the Model 3, second. Latin American EV sales in the first quarter grew a whopping 74% year over year. We talked about how a lot of people don't know that the world is electrifying, and they don't think a place like Latin America is going to electrify. 74% up over last year. And of course, the oil shock from Iran makes all this even, you know, there's data coming in now that is showing that this is really making an effect. It wasn't just my sister-in-law who bought a PHEV in Calgary. This is not Millie, by the way. This is another person. It's not just her that made that decision. Lots of people are saying, okay, screw it. Let's do this.
Our entire lives, people get upset with gas prices.
Yes.
It's a common thing because every couple of years, gas prices spike. But guess what? There's now an alternative when people start complaining about gas prices.
We're at a different place now. There's lots of alternatives, and people know people with EVs, and they think, well, I want to be them. Tesla slashes the Canadian Model 3 price to $39,490 with the China-made supply shift. Very enticing car. Because you know what? My Chevy Bolt is more than that.
Wow.
I think it's like $43,000, but you get $5,000 off. But still, it's getting very interesting because that Model 3 comes fully stocked. Maybe not with full self-driving, but it comes with, you don't have to pay extra for heated seats. Everything's in there.
Basically, all the features. You can pay for the subscription to self-driving if you want for $100 a month. So yeah, 39,000 Canadian, that's about 30,000 in US dollars.
So if you wanted to compare that to, say, a Chevy Bolt or a Nissan Leaf, you would have to compare it to the highest trim levels, which go up by quite a few $1,000s, at least $7,000 to the higher trim levels. And even then, the Model 3 has some advantages over the technology in those cars. Yeah. So, and they've been around for a long time, so they've worked out a lot of the problems.
Yeah, the software is really great. Even if you don't get the self-driving, the operating system for Teslas is amazing.
Solar panels fitted every 3 minutes in the United Kingdom since the Iran conflict. So every 3 minutes, a new person is getting solar in the United Kingdom. 27,000 solar panel installations in March alone, the highest monthly total for 14 years. So that was one of those examples. On Saturday morning, solar was supplying nearly 2/3 of the Texas power grid. 2/3 solar, which means when solar goes up, you can see a graph here that I'm showing you, Brian. Other things go down. Natural gas becomes like a third or a quarter of what it was outputting. So you can see the displacement of gas during the daytime hours.
And it was turn down the gas when the sun is shining.
And that's mostly what they did. And a little bit of wind in there as well, but it was also, as we said earlier, it slows down during sunny weather, and that was the case. But it wasn't zero. It was still pretty good, and it goes up when the sun is not shining. Just not perfect. Bipartisan group, this is interesting, a bipartisan group of U.S. senators is traveling to Beijing and Shanghai to better understand China's tech ecosystem. I think somebody in the U.S. Senate listened to our podcast. I really do.
Yeah.
Somebody's getting the message. And, we've been preaching this for a long time. Not only are we talking about the clean energy out of China, we're a lot of people don't realize that they have biases against China, thinking that they're backwards or they're still in the 18th century or something, like it's not the case. They are way out competing us.
All right. You can find us on social media like TikTok, Instagram, and Blue Sky. Look for Clean Energy Pod. That email is cleanenergyshow@gmail.com. And remember to hit that follow or subscribe button, and you will get new episodes delivered every week.
Yeah. Join us on Patreon, patreon.com/cleanenergypod. And I want to thank those people who've already done that. Thank you to our Clean Club members. Those are the people who give us $5 a month and get a monthly bonus podcast, among other things. And they also get a shout out once a month. Noah Cook, Denny and Linda, Jonathan Dick, Bob Eaton, Josh Engen, Sean Ennis, Andy Fessler, Roshan Gervais, Sean Hines. Sorry, Sean. I'm getting my Seans mixed up. Just Jack, Timo Kellenberger, David Klinke, Peter O'Donnell, Weldon Penner, Robu, Arthur Slade, Joe Thorsheim, Landon Yu, and Richard W. Thank you all so much for your generosity and keeping this podcast going. And we'll see you again in 7 days.
See you next week.